Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Wednesday webinar. And we are really excited about this topic. I know that you all hear me say how excited I am about a lot of our webinars, and I am because we have great webinar speakers. But so many of you have wanted to learn about designing tinted weddings. And Jackie Watson is a pro at this. And I was so glad when she told me that she would be delighted to do this because she loves our ABC members. So I am going to be quiet. You all already received her bio. I'm going to step back and not take up any other time and present to you Jaclyn Watson.
Perfect. Thank you, Miss Shelby. Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be here again. I was at your conference teaching a little bit about AI this past year, and now I get to talk to you about another passion of mine, which is tinted weddings. If you were at my regular or at my class, you'll know that I'm a little bit different when it comes to speaking. Like, I'd rather answer questions than get through all the slides because I actually will send you this PowerPoint. So if there's any questions as I'm going through, please let me know. I've been in the industry for 17 years. I've been designing tents for 15 years. I actually am classically trained in tinted weddings, and people often wonder, well, how are you classically trained in that? I actually worked with a tent company for a number of years before I went out on my own, understanding every single element of a tent, from the different styles, the different shapes, the different sizes, how they move, how they flow, what they can withstand, what they can't. And we're going to talk all about that. And we're going to start with the boring stuff, which is the logistics of a tinted wedding, and then we're going to talk about design. So it's a little bit of a two-parter here. So we'll get started with that. The art of designing a tinted wedding is truly, truly your most creative thing that you can do because you are building on a blank canvas. It is not like a ballroom. It's not like a loft. It's not like a barn. You truly do have a blank canvas that you can look at. And building that room from nothing is really the structure, figuring out the contingency plans. How is everything going to move? How are the guests going to remember things? All things that we're going to talk about today. And can everybody see? And let me just put this in presenter mode. Can everybody see this now? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So let's go over the five things that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the blank canvas mindset, and I want you to remember that. Why tents change the entire planning approach. And truly, when you are working with a client and they want a tented wedding, you need to make sure that you have this mindset in effect because planning a tented wedding is very different, as we all know. Planning a tented wedding is also double the cost, which a lot of people do not know or understand. And we'll go into that a little bit. We're going to look at the structural foundations, flooring, ceiling, rigging, climate control, power. All of it has to be done through a tent because you're building ground up. We're going to talk a little bit about weather and contingency plans, building flexibility into the design from the very first moment that you get that tent, so that you are safe and secured when you do the big build. We're also going to talk a little bit about guest experience and flow, how arrival, sight lines, shifting from indoor, outdoor, how all of that works and how you can keep it cohesive and feeling like it's a really just one more thing that is part of the day that is very normal and guests don't even know the difference. And then lastly, as I talked about, we're going to talk about design details that do the heavy lifting, like your lighting, your linens, your placement of your band, etc. Draping, the architectural behind the tent. So those are kind of the five things that I'm gonna do. I could talk about tinted weddings all day long, but I am gonna try and keep it at that hour, so that we can keep doing questions. And Miss Shelby, could you just let me know when we're like at the 45-minute mark so that I can go into Q&A?
Sure.
Perfect. Okay. So, what is the blank canvas mindset? A tent gives you a total creative freedom, but the freedom comes with a catch. And that's one of the things that a lot of planners doing tinted weddings forget. And this canvas, this blank canvas, there's nothing in it until you put something in it. You have no walls, no ceiling, no flooring, no outlets. So you really need to plan for it and figure it out. So let's design or let's talk about the structural foundation first. And this is kind of the nitty-gritty, sometimes a little boring. Flooring wise, I don't know if anybody's ever, ooh, it went back. I don't know if anybody's ever done floors in tents. Floors are actually one of the most common things because ground slope. So if you're doing a tented event, it's a pretty good idea to do a full floor. The problem with the full floors, the wood, the marley, any of it, it is very expensive. A tent that's doing 150 people with a full floor is probably going to run them $40,000. So it's quite expensive. So I would say more than probably 80% of planners end up not doing flooring, because their clients just don't have the budget. And not doing flooring is fine. You just need to have contingency plans for rain and grass. Um, so one of the questions that I do want to ask all of you, and for some reason, my PowerPoint in Zoom doesn't last, so we're gonna use it this way. Um, has anybody ever done a full floor in a tent before? Just raise your hand, shout out, yes, put it in the comments. I'm just curious. Let me look here. Comments, no. Okay, yes, yes. Okay, okay, great. Okay, so some of you have and some of you haven't. Okay, awesome. So one of the things that I think is really important with flooring a tent and why I like it is that a lot of people are coming from the cities and they tend to wear high heels and they sink into the grass. The flooring really does finish the tent. It really brings it all together and makes it feel like a elegant traditional venue, while being outside. So like those are some of the biggest elements that I look at when I'm flooring. I also know that if it is, and Vermont is a great, because I do a lot of Vermont tented weddings, Vermont is a great place to floor simply because we have a lot of rain. And when you do a tent, if your tent is not up within 3 to 4 days prior to the wedding, it's going to be really wet under there. So, my number one piece of advice if you're doing a tented wedding is to make sure that you can have that install done 2 to 3 days prior to the event if you can't do full flooring. If you're going to do full flooring, it's going to take 2 to 3 days prior to the event because it takes a day and a half to do the floor. Um, so, lighting. Has anybody? I'm assuming that a lot of you have worked with lighting companies that have come in, done chandeliers or bistro lights, twinkle lights, etc. Is that correct? You can again just put yes or no. Yes. Okay. Um, so we're one of the biggest things that I say to tented events is that lighting is everything. Lighting is what makes the tent shine. You can have the prettiest linens in there, but if you don't have the right lighting, it's a fail. Lighting can be everything from a 50-pound chandelier to 100 bistro lights to 5,000 twinkle lights. We actually just did a wedding. We had close to 8,000 twinkle lights going throughout our tent. And that takes a while, but it truly, truly does make a massive impact. We use a lot of drum shades in our tents. Our clients are very modern, very contemporary. So we tend to look at their home as the canvas, and we try to bring their home to the tent, which is one of my favorite things to do. So I just want you to remember, like, lighting is like the number one thing in tents to think about whenever you're doing a tented event. It doesn't matter what kind of lighting, as long as there is some format of lighting. Um, Doing up lights around the tent is really important. So if you don't have any lighting in the ceiling, do up lights. They're inexpensive. They're like $50 a piece to rent at rental companies. They can do different colors. They can do different BOGOs where it's different patterns on the ceiling. But again, it's another element that you're adding that just kind of brings everything together. Um, the other thing that you should always think about, and I don't know if you guys have gotten this from your clients, you cannot do AC in a tent. You can do it, but it's very, very expensive. The tent has to be closed 100% of the time to make sure that AC is working, which really sucks because people want a beautiful sailcloth tent because it's open and airy and you get to see everything outdoors. But if you want, a AC unit, it only covers X amount of square footage in there. And in order to keep it obviously like a home, you need to close everything up. So I don't really tell my clients to do AC. AC is also very expensive. It's extremely hard to get into tents. We do a lot of heaters. Has everybody in here used heaters in tents throughout the seasons? So heaters are really great. That's another thing that you can put on your logistical checklist if you don't have heaters. Um, a lot of our weddings take place in the fall. It gets a little cold, so we have to put one or two heaters in there. They're really easy. They could put a great output out. You actually don't have to have the tent walls down because the air flows from the heaters. So if you don't have heaters on your checklist, they should be. That is one logistical item that should always be on your checklist anytime that you know that the cold weather is going to be a challenge. So, the other and final logistical thing that you need to talk about or have on your checklist when doing a tented wedding is power and utilities. When you're working ground up, you have to provide everything, right? We're providing catering tents, we're providing all the ovens, all the cressers, all the lighting power, all the band power. And that can't be run off just a venue or a private home. We actually need to bring in generators. So here's my catch with generators. And I think every tent company does this. If you have a generator on site, the number one thing that you need to also have on site is your tent tech. And that is the person who will be there to plug everybody in, make sure your generator's working. We had a generator default on us a couple weekends ago. I'm a proponent of more is better when it comes to power. So we actually had a backup generator just in case because we ended up blowing a couple circuits due to coffee urns because they take so much power. And thank goodness that we had a backup generator because that's what saved us and nobody was the wiser. So one of the things that I would say, especially to those who are planners, and I'd love to know, like, just put in the comments, like, what you're doing. If you're a planner, if you're a photographer, because I just want to make sure I understand a little bit about everybody. Make sure that you have somebody there to take care of your power. You as a planner, you as a florist, as a photographer, whatever you're doing, it's not your job. And it is one of the most important things that you're dead in the water if you don't have the right power. What I suggest that you do in order to do tinted weddings that are really great is you create an Excel sheet and you put in all the vendors that need power and you ask all your vendors, how many amps of power do you need? You send that amp request to your rental company and say, all right, we have 14 vendors. They each need 20 to 40 amps of power. And they're going to be able to tell you, okay, you're going to need one, two, or three generators. Generators come in different sizes. You don't really need to worry about that. The reason that I understand it is because, again, I chose to learn about those specific things. We had a generator give out on us what was it, in May on our bathrooms. And had I not known how to switch out a fuse, we wouldn't have had bathrooms. So those are kind of the things that happen that you need to keep in the back of your mind, that you know how to turn on a generator, how to turn off a generator just in case, and what happens if one of the fuses blow. Think of those three things. Everything else, a person at the rental company should be there doing for you and with you. Okay, questions so far? Because that's a big logistical, like four things to make sure you're doing.
I don't see any questions in the chat, so you can keep going.
Okay, perfect. Um, so we're going to talk a little bit about weather and contingency plans, and this is kind of where I would love to have you guys chime in on what you've experienced. Um, so what is a good alternative to AC for a tent? Okay, it's actually a great question. There is not a good alternative to AC. However, there is an option. Most rental companies have fans that go on the center poles. They literally clip on the center poles. And what the fans do, they don't provide AC, but they do move air. And when you're having airflow or air movement, it actually does feel cooler in that tent. So if you can't get AC, which 90% of the time we don't do, we do have 4 to 5 fans that are on the upper end of the tent poles that just filter the air through and it moves the air around so people don't feel stagnant or too hot. Um, so that's my piece of advice. Um, how many have dealt with rain with tents? Yeah, a lot of people. It's a pain. Okay, so here is hi Alexis. I didn't know you were on. Yeah, you. Here's one question that I have for you. How many have evacuated a tent from a thunderstorm? Give me a thumbs up or thumbs down or no. A lot of people and every place is very different when it comes to rental companies. At the end of the day, what I will tell you that is that you need to make sure and tell all of your clients at the very beginning of you planning this event, of you saying, okay, we're going to do a rain tent, or we're going to do a tent. You're going to need to tell them up front that if there is a thunderstorm, you should not be in that tent. You are in an outside structure and you are basically a lightning magnet. You have these beautiful wooden poles. If you're not in a sailcloth tent, you're in a steel frame or an aluminum pole tent. And those just, they're like magnets for lightning. It's never happened to me. I've never been struck, but I have evacuated tents 4 times at this point in my career. And we do it in a really nice way. So here's your weather plan for what you can do with your clients. If it is raining, make sure that you have a rain backup plan for ceremony and cocktail. Do not do it all in one tent because it looks chaotic and clustered. Make sure you have 2 tents. We have a wedding this weekend. It's for 100 people and we still have 2 tents because I don't want to be picking up chairs and putting in cocktail tables while guests are there. It looks really bad. So that's the number one thing. For a rain plan, if you're in a tent, have a rain plan tent. For evacuation, make sure again to tell your clients from the get-go, hey, it's probably not going to happen, but we just want you to know if there is a thunder and lightning storm, we can't stay in this tent. And every tent company is different. The safest thing is not to be in the tent. So what I do is when it happens, I tell everybody, all right, everybody, I get on the mic or I have the band get on the mic and kind of do a little joke with it, and I make everybody feel really comfortable about it. Hey, listen, for your safety, we're going to have you exit the tent. If you have buses, we're going to put everybody on the bus. And then you're going to have catering get on the bus with glasses of champagne or water and pass them out because that's what's going to alleviate the tension and allow your guests to relax with a glass of bubbly and feel like, okay, we get this. The storm's going to pass by in 10 or 15 minutes. So let them pass by and then get everybody back in there. Um, so let me just shut my door. I apologize. Oh, UPS has just showed up with 18 boxes for my wedding. So my dogs are letting me know. Um, so weather contingency plan is always a necessity and just have everybody go out for 10, 15 minutes, get them on the bus, give them, you could even do cocktails on the bus if you needed to for like appetizers. We've done that before. If it's at a home, very great question. We still have buses because you don't want, with a tented wedding, people go to private properties. You're going to have buses because nobody should be driving because we don't want drunk people driving. So the family and the immediate family will go into the house while all the guests will go on to the bus. If there is a garage, that's another great place that you can put everybody. A lot of people that do tented weddings have 2 or 3 bay garages. Um, have the person as your contingency plan, have your client clean that garage out and say, hey, listen, if it's bad weather, we're going to use this garage. You could set up a cheese station real quick in there, anything. So the goal is to get them out quickly and quietly and without freaking them out, and then bring them back in. Any questions so far? Okay. Has anybody ever dealt with wind in a tent? You just want to put yes. Okay, not yet. Yes. Okay. So, for those who have not, please know I do not want to freak you out. This is again a logistical thing as you're doing tinted events or getting into tinted events that you need to think about. Um, Tents can't withstand more than 45-mile-per-hour gusts. We actually lost a tent 5 years ago, 6 years ago, where we had a microburst and it literally picked our tent up and put it into a parking lot. Um, so you need to make sure that you have wing contingency plans too. For us, we knew that we were at a resort property, and my contingency plan was the ballroom. And we moved everything into the ballroom. Um, we did have a contingency plan for a private property, and I'll talk about that now. Last year, we had very high winds. They were close to 30 miles per hour. It took out 3 of our tent poles. It took out a main tent pole in the middle, and it took out 3 of our perimeter poles. Um, in that moment, the first thing that you need to do is one, call your rental company to come up and fix it. Two, keep your clients out of it. If you have to delay, then you need to delay. We were very lucky. The wind that came for us happened the night before. So when I always arrive like at 6 a.m. to check my tents, and I saw half the tent was caved in. So immediately called my rental company and I'm like, hey guys, we've lost three or four of our poles. We got to get you back up here and we got to figure out if we can fix these poles. None of the poles broke. That's the most important thing. And none of them probably will break unless you have like, 50-mile plus. But they will fall in. They will cave in. And that's typical for any tent that you do. So if you haven't dealt with wind experience, know that that very much could happen. And there's nothing you can do about it other than to call the people that put it up to have them come do that and to stay out of it until it's done. Um, and then dust storms. I'm in Phoenix. Brenda, you're in Phoenix. Do you have a lot of dust storms? Tell me about that. Is she still with me? So dust storms, I would drop tent sides. We have had that happen to us in California. So what we typically do if we know everybody checking their weather like 4 days out, and watching it. Andrew Levitt does weather forecasting for industry pros. He's a great one to reach out. We typically look up the Weather Channel or, any of the local news stuff to watch it. So if you know that winds are going to be high and it's always on your weather stuff, then I would prepare to have those tent sides drop. This is another reason as planners that you should always have a tech on site because those techs from the rental company can drop sides really quick and roll them up really quick. Save yourself from doing that. Like I've seen planners struggle trying to roll up tent sides or drop them. Have somebody on site. It is worth it. Your client will be so happy with you because of it. Um, and then, like I said, rain, you're going to want to drop sides then. So here's something that you should know, logistically wise, and then we'll get into the design aspect of it. If you are having a windstorm, do not shut up your entire tent because your tent is like a funnel, right? And once wind goes in, if it doesn't have any place for it to go out, it will literally pick your tent up. It doesn't matter if it's a sailcloth, if it's aluminum, if it's a frame, it will pick it up because it is a vacuum. It's like a suction inside. So if you're dropping three of the walls, the two sides and one of the ends, you're going to leave an end open. You got to do that so that the wind has somewhere to go. That is the biggest safety measure that you need to remember. I don't care where you write that, but write it down somewhere and always, always know that. Same with rain. Oftentimes, you when you drop tent poles, has everybody experienced rain coming in from the side walls, from the top of the tent? It comes down through. It's absolutely horrible. Um, when you're designing these tents, make sure that there's nothing there, tables, stage, band, whatever. Give yourself 5 feet away, 5 feet of distance away from that tent wall so that if it rains, the water's not going to come down on anything. We had a planner one year put an entire beautiful 10-foot charcuterie station right up against the tent wall, and it just downpoured and it was ruined because she didn't bring it in. So always remember when you're designing, make sure that you're measuring, bring everything in at least 5 feet, and that's your perimeter. Okay. Questions? The boring part's done. Okay, so let's go to, well, now I gotta figure out how to make this work. Okay. Oh, that's why. All right. So let's get into guest experience and flow. And this is the next 15-20 minutes that I'm going to talk about. How do you know what size tent you need? Ooh, great question. The size of tent really depends on what you want to do. This is something your rental company needs to know. You can go to them and say, hey, we have 150 people, but this is what you need to remember when you're getting a tent sent to you. You remember how many people for the guest count are going to be in there, how many vendors are going to be in there, if you need a stage, if you need a dance floor, if you're going to be doing multiple events in there. So if you don't get a second tent and you know ceremony is going to be in that first tent for rain, that tent needs to be twice the size so that you can accommodate everybody. So when you reach out to the rental company, you want to make sure and tell them all the things that you have planned under that one tent, and they will be able to tell you the size of the tent that you need. Um, Most of the time, I work in 59 by 109s. I use double sailcloth or double pole sailcloth tents because they are wider and more conducive to design. The frame tents are great. You have a wider berth, so you have a little bit more room. The only problem with the frame tents are the clear span tents. That's the clear ceiling on top. They are like greenhouses, so you can't really use them in the summer. You can only use them in the fall because it will become 100 degrees in there. And you don't want anybody with heat stroke. So that's what I would say about tent sizing. Tent sizing and types of tents. Okay. Any other questions before I move on? Awesome. All right. And please know, like I am giving you like my top 5 things. There are many other things, so if you want to have a side conversation with me, we can absolutely do that. So guest experience and flow. Let's get into this. When you have a tented wedding, the arrival moment is very different because you're not in a lobby, you're in an open space. You want to build anticipation. You want to have some sort of lighting or some sort of moment. And if you go back to this picture, the first picture that I did, this is an entrance. This is an arrival moment, right? The guests know exactly where to go. They feel confident about it. They're like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. So, number one thing when you're designing an tent is have an arrival moment and have an exit moment, because that's what's going to help transition all of your guests into that design and into the story that you're creating under that tent. So the acoustics are something else that you guys need to think about, and this is a logistical thing too. Um, but make sure that your speakers, I've seen this time and time again, where they put guest tables like 2 feet from the speakers of the band, and the poor guests are like freaking out because it's so loud. All your guest tables should be at least 8 feet away from any band stage, any DJ, any speakers, any side walls. You can do the 5 feet mark, like I told you. So think about that as well. You don't want your guests to be on top of your music entertainment. Also with design and overall, you want to think about your sight lines. You want to think about tent poles. What kind are they? If they're beautiful wooden poles, do you really need to do anything? If they're aluminum poles, maybe think about bringing in trees to hide them. You could also drape aluminum poles. We've done that. So that is something that you could absolutely do. Um, Stupid spam calls, I tell you. Also think about rigging. If you're doing chandeliers, things like that, you have cables coming down, right? So you want to make sure there's no rigging that is in the sight line. So make sure that your draping goes around the perimeter of the tent. Beautiful chiffon draping makes every tent scream elegance every time. And you want to put yourself into that that guest seat, right? Walking around the tent and seeing that placement. There needs to be a really harmonious flow of, okay, table one's here, so guest number at table two is going to know exactly where table two is because there's a really beautiful flow about it. Um, Restroom trailers, walkways, they should all be within 50 to 75 feet of your event. If you're making your guests walk 100 feet or more to a restroom trailer, they're not going to be overly happy with you. So try to remember to have them close. You could put, I know restroom trailers can kind of be like these big silver boxes that everybody think are gaudy. Have your florist do some greenery, some landscape in front of them and make it beautiful. Like, how beautiful is it to put some Boston ferns and some trees and just make it this moment where, yeah, we're going to the bathroom, but we don't feel like we're going to the bathroom. So really be intentional about placement and how you're covering up things, masking things, so that it all flows together. If you're going to do trees inside the tent on all the poles, do some trees outside where the restrooms are, do some trees along the walkway. Everything needs to be done with intention and flow in order to make a tent feel like it's a home. And that's kind of how I look at all my tents. I want every guest to feel like they have just walked into a massive party at their home that they threw. Okay. Draping, without walls, draping is really important. Draping basically creates the walls and ceiling. We always recommend doing draping on ceilings in like canvas tents, aluminum tents, because they have that hard plastic. Draping softens them immediately and it brings the eye down. And that's really, really important. You don't want everybody to come in and see this huge tent and look up and all they see is this hard plastic. So draping is one of the things that you can do in any tent that you have that immediately softens it. It could be draping around the perimeter poles and doing some beautiful styled openings. It could be draping that is swooped or angled in the ceiling. You could have an entire entrance that you can open up. There is just an infinite amount of ideas that you can use, and price points vary depending on what you do. Lighting, as we talked about, is about the same. How can you drape walls without creating a liability issue if winds knock it over or if draping flows and catches something? Okay, again, really great question, but this is one more reason why everything needs to be 5 feet from the wall of the tent. Um, because when you're right, when there is wind, the draping panels absolutely fly. But if you're 5 feet away, if that closest table is 5 feet away, you'll be fine. It won't catch. So that's what I would say that helps cut down on the liability issues. The other thing to think about too, when you have a professional draper, like Drape Art Designs is really amazing. They travel all over the world. Um, they do different tiebacks on their draping. So like if we know that we're going to have wind, they'll actually do two different tiebacks, one in the middle and then one at the bottom and then blouse it out. That is another great way if you're dealing with wind to stop draping from going all over the place. That's a really great question. Lighting, chandeliers, uplighting, string lights, we talked about. They really, really make your tent shine. So again, I emphasize you doing that. Furniture is another great way. I'm sure a lot of you guys have had clients come to you and say, hey, we want um, a little lounge area, a little vignette. And that's a great way to liven up your tent. What I personally love to do when it comes to design and layouts of tents, I love to put a little vignette, which is usually two couches and a couple chairs, maybe a couple coffee tables, right by the dance floor or somewhere in a corner. Lounge furniture in a corner of a tent always shines. It's everybody immediately flocks to it as soon as dancing happens, because it's their time to have an intimate conversation. So I highly recommend doing one or two vignettes in the corners of tents or by the dance floor. We've done it both. Okay. Questions so far? Okay. Pretty is not enough. So this is one of my most favorite designs. We actually designed this through AI. This is real life, this photo. We created this insanely beautiful dropped floral canopy. While not in a tent, you can do this in a tent, and I have done this in a tent. You can also do the ring chandeliers in a tent. So really think outside the box. When the details you've created don't connect, and that's that cohesion that I've been talking about, it really leaves guests confused. So make sure everything makes sense. Everything that you're doing is with intention. Um, Make sure that all your vendors know. You don't want anybody lost in translation. I think that's really important. Send them a design deck. If you're not using AI to create your design decks, you should be. That's a whole nother topic that will save you about 4 hours of your day, or more. Um, the other thing that I often see what happens with design is that guests don't remember what they've been to if it's not intentional, if it's not making a moment for them. So you want to make sure that you're using your five senses. How is it making them feel? What are they smelling? What are they seeing? What are they touching? What are they feeling? Um, don't forget that because it's so important when you're working through a tent design. Um, Perfect segue. Uh, when you're designing a tent, do it around the five senses. This is my number one piece of advice. Anytime that you are working with a client who's doing a tent, you should have it written down. Sight, touch, sound, scent, memory. How are all of these things going to be impacted? Your sight is your color, your light, your portion, your scale, how your tables are placed. Your touch is your textural linens, your draping, your napkins. Is it warm? Is it cold? Your sound is the music at the right decibel level? Is it too much? Do we have the right music for dinner time? Scent. A lot of people have issues with scent, you guys. Like, think about that when you're designing. Make sure that your client doesn't have any allergies to certain flowers or any, like, candles right now. Candles are very, very pretentious to me, because they can be really, really horribly smelling. So go into this knowing, use flowers that are really lovely. Yes, Brenda, I'm going to send this entire slide to you. So make sure that scent is something that you're really thinking about because it really can set people into a happy mode, a sad mode, an angry mode. Um, it really does. And then memory. What is that emotional impact? Again, you're creating a story, their story, your client's story. So make sure that there is some sort of emotional impact. And I always say to my clients, I don't want your guests coming to your wedding. Guests go to weddings all the time. I want your guests being a part of your wedding. I want your guests immersed in your wedding. I want your guests walking away feeling like they actually know you a little bit better. If you can do that, you can design any tent any time of the day. When you're talking with your client, inspiration point wise, have them name the feelings. Start with emotion. Don't ask them what colors do you want, because that comes later. Ask them what do they want their guests to feel? What do they want to feel themselves? What is the impact moment that they want to walk away with? Then you're going to choose one design anchor, one central element that everything builds around. That could be trees in the middle of the tent. It could be the linens on the tables. It could be a charger plate. And it's just going to build from there in way of colors, in way of texture, in way of how everything ebbs and flows. The other big thing to think about with design is less is more. I see a lot of people just doing more, 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 and they think that it's the greatest thing. The problem is when you do more, you create chaos. The goal of any tinted wedding is to have flow and intention. And I keep saying that over and over. But less is not more when it comes to a tent because you can overfill a tent and it can look like a clustered, chaotic, cold, uninviting location. Elements that shape the emotion. Again, we've just talked about color, the lighting, the linen textures, and I put these three photos specifically so that you guys could see how textural linens can make something. We did this wedding was on all grass. So I purposely used a really heavy linen that was light in color so that it blended more in. And if you notice all of the draping that goes around the tent, everything flows. So you almost don't even notice it's on grass when you walked in because we were really purposeful about how low everything was going to hang, how high the trees were going to go up, what the linens look like, what the chairs look like. We didn't do any dark woods because we had dark green grass. So we want to do lighter and airier and make it feel intentional that we're bringing the outdoors in. Same with this design. This was in a ballroom. Again, we wanted to use a beautiful black linen. So we went with black and gold chairs. Everything flows from the style of glassware to the type of linen to the plate that sat on the linen. That is what design is. It is these moments that catapult your guests into other moments. It's these textures that are on textures. Um, and it's things that your guests will never ever forget. I love it. Um, again, flow and layout. Remember where your guests are walking, where they're going to sit, where they're going to go throughout the night. Those are all transitions. Okay, I'm going to take 2 more minutes and then we're going to do Q&A. We talked a little bit about this, but these are four things that your vendors should always know, no matter what, whether you're a tent or not. They should have a design brief or a design deck from you so they understand where they're coming. If you're doing an all black and white wedding and they show up in a red tuxedo jacket, it's going to look really bad. So like make sure they understand the design elements that you are doing, the color palettes, the mood boards, everything. And send them touch point walkthroughs. Like they need to understand where arrival is, where cocktail hour is, where dinner is, where the send off is, where the bathrooms are. It's not just you, the planner, or you, the florist. Every single vendor needs to know what is expected and what they're going to see because that's what brings harmony into that environment. Um, this was one of my favorite weddings of all time. This was for a 300-person wedding. Um, Taylor and Duncan, and then Kareen and Ted are at the bottom. But this design, again, you would never know it was on grass because we had the right lighting. This was one of the ones where we did 8,000 twinkle lights. Um, and we had trees everywhere. It was the most romantic, beautiful thing we've ever created, in my opinion. Um, and I'm always out, I'm always trying to outdo myself for this one. But it's beautiful, and you can tell, like it feels warm, it feels inviting. You can feel the love just in this one photo. That is what tinting design, good tinted design is. Like when somebody walks in and they're just like, wow, I feel so welcomed. I feel so invited. Again, as we talked about, um, think about the journey process. You have your arrival, your cocktail hour, your reception, your room entry. Those are the three times where you're going to have different transitions. So you want to make sure those transitions are smooth and flowing throughout. Um, Consistency is the secret to cohesion. Does every element feel like it belongs to the same family, as we talked about? Would a guest describe the event the same way it was described to you? Is there a moment that stops guests in their tracks? Three questions to have every time you're designing a wedding. If you can answer those three questions, then you have done well. Just some quick stats. 67% of what guests remember is how they felt. Design the feeling first. 8 seconds you have to form a first impression. 3 times more likely to be referred when design is cohesive. Crazy, right? 3 times more likely to be referred. Guests notice everything, not just the bride and groom. What you're walking away with today, or what I hope you walked away with, is a clear approach to turning inspiration into an experience. Some practical ways to guide vendors through that vision, some logistical ways for you all to remember, and just an overall deeper understanding of how design shapes emotion and memory. That was really important. So, um, all right, so that's kind of my presentation, and I wanted to leave at least a good 10 minutes to answer questions and just talk with you. If you wouldn't mind, I would absolutely love for you, because I love to speak, just look at that little scan code and just let me know what you guys thought. Um, Tell me your feedback. I love feedback, good or bad, because I want to always be better. Okay, so let's go into questions and just let them rip. I know that I said a lot in this presentation. You're going to get these slides. I'm going to try and create you like a top 10 things to remember too, for tented events as well, that I'll send to you. But let's open it up.
If you all have any questions, go ahead and you can put them in the chat, or you could just
You can
raise your
just talk.
or you can just raise your hand. Anybody? I know Jackie was really good at answering a lot of questions during her presentation. Jackie, do you see that one? What is
What is
something?
something, yep, what is
Mhm.
something that a rental or decor company can do to wow the planner and the client during a design meeting? Oh, I love this question. Set an entire table. So here's a quick tip for you. Um, Anytime that you're doing a tented wedding and you have a caterer on site, do one table that you set yourself on how you want it, and you say, this is how I want it to be done. Your caterer will love you forever. You will make the most lasting impression on their team. And then I would say that to a rental company too. Like, don't be afraid to say to the rental company, these are what they're thinking about, for plates or whatnot. Can you set an entire tablescape for me? Every time a rental company does that, like I'll walk into Peak or Vermont Tent or BBJ, they have an entire table set for me, and I'm like, I don't have to do it. And they're like, no, we got you. It is wild. It just makes my heart sing. Um, okay. Any other questions? That
This
was
is your opportunity.
This is your op. Don't be shy. And like this is like, I know for me, when I get asked this after and when I'm in a class, it's like, oh, I don't want to ask. I don't want to ask. But like, please ask. This is something I love to do, and I could talk hours on it. And if you don't want to ask, send me an email. Shelby has my email. And I will send everybody the whole PowerPoint. So that's not an issue. Have you worked with a clear tent? Yes, I work in clear tents all the time. I've worked in every tent. How sturdy are they, especially for lighting fixtures? Actually, clear tents are a little bit sturdier than aluminum pole and or sailcloth tents because they have a frame structure. Whereas sailcloth tent side panels or the poles they come out with cables and gables to hold them in place. So personally, I think a clear tent has a lot more options to adding in heavier lighting because you have more of a stability factor, whereas you actually have to wire and use gable lines in like sailcloth tents because there's nothing there. Whereas a frame tent, you have the frame itself.
Jackie, there's
Uh,
a couple more.
okay, so what would you say is a good budget for a client to have a tented wedding? What I can say is you can't have a tented wedding, like a nice tented wedding, unless you're willing to spend 150 plus. Um, Simple as that. Like you can't do it on 60,000 or 80,000. And if it helps, most of our clients are spending anywhere from 200,000 to half a million on our events for tented events. What else? What would you say? Okay. What about Misters? Phoenix uses them as restaurants and other public places. What is that? I don't understand. Misters. Shelby, do you know what that means?
I don't. Brenda, what is it?
So they use these things that spray water out, but they don't really get you wet. They just kind of cool the air.
Oh,
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 Mister. Okay.
misters. Now I get it. Oh, that's wild. I love that. Um, so we don't have that here. That would probably be pretty cool to have as long as it's not drenching everybody. I think that's a great idea. Um, yeah, I we don't have that up here, but Phoenix, dang, that's cool. How do you keep clear tents from becoming a greenhouse? Alexis, you do not. That is why clear tents oftentimes are only used in the fall. If a client comes to me and they say we want a clear tent, I'll say that they need to change their date. It can get up to 120 degrees inside a clear span tent if it is sunny out, and that is a hazard to your lighting team. It's a hazard to anybody that walks in there if you can't do it with AC. So if you're going to use, that's one of the other ways. If they're willing to spend money on AC, that is when you can do a clear tent. The other way that you can do clear tent, and Alexis, you're local too. Um, Peak has these amazing clear tents, and they have top panels, ceiling panels that they can roll out and roll back. It's more expensive, but it's definitely worth doing. And what we typically do is we'll have them do the panels for all of the setup, and then probably about 3 hours prior to the guest, because it takes a little while, we have them roll them back. That's a great one too.
So, Jackie, a couple of more
Okay.
before we
I'm a new
close.
wedding planner and want the best way to network and build partnerships with our vendors for your wedding. I am a new wedding planner. Okay, Emily, what you're doing now, enjoying networking groups and put yourself out there. Like it's really hard in this industry, and a lot of us are introverts. And this is the one place that we have to work to be an extrovert. Um, see here. When do you recommend? Oh, where did it go? Um, oh, for bug sprays. Oh, this is a great one. I should have put that in the slide. Bug sprays. Everybody does them. You can just go into Google and say bug spray for wedding. They actually have these, or you can put organic spray for events. Um, they have in every city or every location I've ever been. Somebody will come in from pest control. They'll do an organic spray. It's a garlic spray that they can put around the entire barrier of the tent. They'll do it about 2 days prior to the event, and then it stops all the bugs. So that's what I would recommend is that you invest and truly it's like I think the most we've spent is 1,500, and we've had the entire house, barrier sprayed. We had around the tent sprayed. Um, Terry citronella candles do work, but they also smell. There's many times that I've used citronella where, because my client was just like, let's do citronella. And then I get guests coming to me, can we just turn them off because it's a really harsh smell? So just keep that in mind. When you do bug spray, you don't need the citronella, and you don't have any smell. It's also safer. That's a good thought, though.
So,
Yeah,
Jackie, this
Brenda's like, it's too hot for bugs. I wish that was the case here.
that's our last question. We're going to have to bring this to an end. I
Perfect.
thank you very much for all of this information. I know that it was well received and that it was very excellent presentation, and you shared a lot of information. So I know I picked a perfect person to come and talk about tinted weddings. So thank
Yeah.
you very much. We'll make
Thank
sure
you,
we get
everyone. I
this
appreciate it.
presentation to you. Um, and I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. I really appreciate you, Jackie. Goodbye,
Thank you,
everyone.
guys. Again, if you need anything or any questions, please just reach out and I'll send all this to Miss Shelby for you.
Lots of hearts on the screen. All right, everyone, have a good rest of your day. We're ending the
Thank
webinar.
you.
I'll see you on September 2nd.